Welcome, adventurers, to John's Dungeon Corner at the Collective. It's Friday afternoon, and we are geared up. So we've been talking a lot, I think, over the last couple of weeks about role playing. Right? We talked about how to create characters. We've talked about the Dungeon Master running a game, and I showed you all the cool accessories that kind of went with that. And last week I had shown you my map. Because we were talking about Dungeon Mastering, creating worlds and that. So today I'm going to touch on role playing. I'm going to touch on, hey, how do we do it? Because there's no right way and there's no wrong way. But before I get kicked off into all that, listen. Thank you, Stephen. And remember, I always tell you guys, whenever you guys come in, say hi to Stephen. Because here's Stephen right here. He helps put on this show, you know. Yep, there he is. That is Stephen. All right, so this new book came in. It's really cool. It's called the Dungeons and Dragons Hero Feast, the official D&D cookbook. I have one of these, and there are such cool recipes in here. So if you want to eat something, if you've ever adventured in some of the more famous inns in the Dungeons and Dragons world, this is the cookbook. I'm telling you, man. I mean, the Heroes Feast has human foods, elven foods, dwarven foods, halflings, and come on, if halfling meals, woo, those are good. So we've got from the different worlds of flavor. Okay, we got Eberron, the Forgotten Realms, Greyhawk, Dragonlance, and of course, you know, the one tavern of all of taverns is the famous the Welcome Wench in Greyhawk, in the Greyhawk world. Love it, love it, love it. So this is all here, and I'm going to tell you some of the meals that they have in here. Oh, it's just like, and you see the pictures, and you're like, here we go. This is called Qualinesti Vegetable Stew. Look at that. That is beautiful. I mean, I said I wasn't going to show anything off, but these pictures are just gorgeous. The meals in here and the recipes are like yummy. So if you ever want to do a feast for your players and everybody wants to collaborate, you know, the halfling rogue wants to cook something, just watch out for the poison and sleeping powders. An elven treat, I'm going to put that right there so you can kind of see it and remind yourself, hey, it's right here at the Collective. Good cookbook. Now, who'd have thought it, right? That the Collective will one day be selling cookbooks. Go figure. So that kind of leads me into my discussion for today of role-playing. So Dungeons & Dragons is a role-playing game. It's an RPG. That's what that stands for, role-playing game. And yeah, there's a lot of combat and a lot of cool things, but role-playing basically means, in its most barest form, is assuming the role of an imaginative character. I mean, it could be you technically, but you'll be playing it through a character, whatever character it is that you are playing at the time in the game. Now, the Dungeon Master, on the other hand, for you Dungeon Masters who are thinking of getting into it, remember, you assume the role of everything else in the world. So if your player is playing Frederick the Barbarian, and you have another one playing Callisto, the Elven Sorceress, well, that's all great because they got to role play one character. You, my friend, Dungeon Masters, to be, or who are, no, you will be doing the rest of everybody else. You will be doing Bartholomew the bartender. You will be Elena the waitress. You're going to be good old Bob the Goblin, who's giving orders to his friends. Bring it the down. You know. Anyway, so there you go. You get to do all that. But so what's role playing? Okay, so let's say you walk into a tavern. The Dungeon Master is going to give you a scene. All right, well, you walk into the Greenfield Inn, and it's quite robust inside. You see a group of adventurers at the table. A couple of, looks like one of the town guard are in for a quick drink before or after shift, hopefully after. Someone's delivering hot, fresh bread. As you enter, you see that the bartender is leaning over and talking to a well-dressed man with a cane about something. That's the scene. And you can elaborate or keep that as simple as you want. That's basically the atmosphere. That is the scene. Now, to add to that, because role-playing isn't just about how you do it, it's not what you're doing, but how you do it. So in this instance, we could have background music playing right now. Maybe a bard, I could put a bard figurine down and they can be playing. Now, you don't have to have this neat little tavern that I have drawn up in front of me. Okay. This is a real nice visual. I talked about the Warlock Towels, but I want to show you how this all comes together for role playing. So I've set the scene as the Dungeon Master. Now, of course, the player comes in, looks around. He's looking for his friends. They haven't quite arrived yet. So I'll say, now I'm going to assume the player, I'm going to go find a chair over there at that empty table with my back to the wall. I want to kind of observe who's coming in and coming out. Maybe catch a whiff of conversation as I walk by. Because I'm interested in maybe catching this here, what the bartender's saying to that noble looking individual. Okay, so you walk by the bar, and you stop off kind of within earshot, but not quite close enough that they can tell you're trying to eavesdrop. And you order a mug of ale. All right. So at this point, we're going to cut to the dice. All right. So in role playing, while I'm role playing, I'm going to sit there. One of my things that I wanted to do was I wanted to eavesdrop on the conversation, see if I could hear what the bartender was saying to them. So as I did that, hey, Jason, Antonio, thanks for joining us. So now I'm going to make a die roll. Probably going to use my perception because I want to try and overhear. And I may even do as a dungeon master, I might even have them do a performance check or a stealth check. Not because I'm trying to hide, but because I'm trying to eavesdrop without them noticing that I'm eavesdropping. So there's a lot of different combinations. So the dice in this point are really secondary. If it's something that, hey, it's not that big of a deal and I really want him. So here's where the dungeon master. I want them to hear what's going on because I want the characters to become involved in what they're talking about. So I may just tell them, all right, well, you approach there, and he makes a roll, and I may, okay, yeah, well, you make it. You hear the bartender whispering about something about the mines and that some of the silver that's coming out is tainted. It's not as pure as it used to be, but it's not pure not because it's bad, but it seems that there's flecks, parts of it have turned to mithril. The silver is somehow being contaminated by mithril, but that could be a good thing, right? Well, I got to tell you that, listen, we need to be very below the belt with this. We got to keep this under wraps. I need you to find me a small group of adventurers that might be able to go in there and not really know what they're doing, but go and search for monsters and bring back a sample of the ore since it's so deep in the mine. And I think there might be some orcs out there. You think you can do that for me? Sure, I'll do that for you as long as, there's a little something in it for me. So that's the conversation that it kind of overhears. I whispered it into the mic. I hope you guys could hear it. But that's kind of like what would go on. And of course, now the character's heard that, goes and takes his seat. He's overheard the conversation. It's like, oh, whoa. So now his friends arrive. They're looking for work. There may be 3 or 4 of them. Eventually the bartender, they get into a conversation with the bartender. And the bartender kind of goes, he's thinking, so here's the theory. Here's the thinking behind the bartender. These guys just walked in. They seem like they're adventurers. I asked my waitress, and I asked Linda, and Linda said that they are adventurers. They were talking about some kind of last adventure they were on. I think I might ask these guys, see if I can finagle them into going down there and checking that out. So that's what they do. And then the whole role-playing scene will go from there. I'm not going to act out all the parts, but here's what I am going to do. In the upcoming weeks, even though I may be talking about a new item that may come out, like the Heroes Feast, or maybe some new miniatures that come out, whatever the next Dungeon Corner is going to be about, I'm going to have guest appearances by players who play Dungeons & Dragons, whether new or veterans or kind of just been getting into it for a while. And I'm going to do little role-playing sessions because it's better when you have more than one person trying to do the monologue, okay? I feel like I'm trying to get a part somewhere. Look, Jason goes, he raises his hand. I'll go, grabs great axe. That's Jason for you. He'll go. He just wants to go on an adventure. I love it. Jason is playing in the Wednesday campaign, and he's having a good time. Him and his friend, Christy. I don't want to mispronounce her name in case she hears this. They're having a real good time. She plays a rogue, and Jason plays a barbarian. So they're having a good time of it. Jason kind of went crazy this last Wednesday. He rolled like 320s, like back to back. It was crazy. Just blew the monster up. Just blew up that skeleton, literally. I blew him up. But it was a lot of fun, and there's some role playing that goes on there. Sometimes in the combat. Oh, Jason goes rage. Yeah, he does that really well too. And role playing is also like talking about combat. I'm glad he sat there and said that. But so say you're in combat, you can actually explain what you're doing. I mean, yeah, it can be as simple as, okay, I roll my die. Okay, I rolled a 17. The dungeon master goes, yeah, that hit. Okay, roll for my damage. Or you can kind of embellish things like that, So I move over to where Elric is because he's being attacked by the orc, and I take my axe and I jump and I try to cleave him in half. He rolls one of those fantastic 20s, which means, he's raging. He's got double damage. He's got 2 attacks, and I bring it down and I swoop it back up, and he rolls and he hits again. And now the dungeon master goes, well, you have essentially killed it. How do you want to do that? And then he goes, well, as I come down with my axe, this is a double-bladed battle axe, I spin it around, I lopped off his head, and there's a gush of blood that comes out. And fountain of blood is everywhere. Then I'll go, Elric, you might want to sit there, make a dex check just to make sure you don't get fountained with blood. And so he would. So it's really neat like that. Those are the kind of things, role-playing moments, that can happen. They can happen in combat. They can happen in discussions between adventurers and NPCs. NPC stands for non-player characters. So everybody basically is either a player character, which are usually the adventurers, an NPC, which is a non-player characters, which is everybody else, the townspeople, the merchants, the bartender, other actual players that are not players. You know what I'm saying? Other adventurers that are not players. And of course, there's monsters. So those are basically your 3 categories of creatures, and those you would role play with. Although, I think you might have a better time role playing with a merchant than you would, let's say, Red Dragon. Although, don't get me wrong, there have been some very interesting conversations between adventuring parties and Red Dragons, especially when the party is undersized and not as experienced as it needed to be to accidentally run into a Red Dragon. But those are the moments, that characters those who keep journals. And that's another thing about role-playing. You can keep journals of your adventures, of where you've been, the kind of creatures and that just adds to the flavor of the game. Imagine a bard, okay, who has traveled a lot, and let's say he's like 6th or 7th level. And later on, you run into a merchant that was talked about earlier, like at 2nd level. He was talking about, hey, this guy, if you really want to sit there and find some good magical items, they're rare, granted, but there's this guy named Giovanni Otraves. And if you can find him at the right time on the road, on the merchant road, he'll usually have a useful magical item or 2. Well, you haven't met this guy. Here you are. You heard about that when you were 2nd level, okay, in real game. And here you are, 6th level now, or 5th level, 3 levels later, so many adventures later. And you actually meet the guy because you happen to go into Night Vale, into the little village of Night Vale, and he was just spending the night. It's morning, and he set up shop for the day, a little merchant day. And you run into him, you're like, hey, this is that guy. See, but if you don't remember him, if you kept a journal, those are the kind of things you want to write down. People you hear about, people that you meet, people that you might meet. So that's just one aspect. Now, I'm going to kind of back up a little bit and talk about character creation. Remember, we talked about that. And we kind of talked about backstories a little bit. So I am going to kind of talk to you about one of my characters. Okay. This is actually, I brought him just so you can see him. This is actually a 17-page backstory that I created for a character, Labyrinth Maelstrom, his background. See, there it is. Labyrinth Maelstrom background. And when I mean it's a full 16 pages, I mean it is. It's got 1.5 spacing. I don't know how many words it is. It's a lot. I love writing. I just love writing. So this is for a 3.5 campaign that I play with my friend Billy. Billy runs it. He has about 6, 7 players, sometimes 8. That's the neat thing about Dungeons & Dragons 2 is that you can kind of float ebb in and out of the game. And like my Wednesday game, sometimes I have 11 players, sometimes I have 6 or 7 players. And I adjust the encounters based on the number of people who show up. And I always end it somewhere Like I have a couple players that may not be able to make it this coming Wednesday. So basically what's going to happen is they're going to disengage. They were left in combat. Usually I try to end it not in combat, but this was kind of like the climactic combat. And one of the characters is going to go and get help from the characters who weren't there that Wednesday because they were guarding the entrance so that they didn't get attacked from behind. Okay, that's a viable option. So now this character will go and advise them, oh my gosh, we need some help down there. You guys go down there. I'll watch this with such and such. And they'll come in if they show up, and that character will be on guard. That way they don't miss out. They still have the continuity of the story. And I always award experience. I'm not an experience monger. Once they get to a milestone and they've participated in that milestone, then they receive the milestone. And that's how characters go up in level. Sometimes it's through experience points at a level, or what I like is the milestone where once we accomplish this, I don't have to worry about keeping track of experience. It's just once this is all over, there will be this, they will get their next level, whether it be 3, the ones going second to third or third to fourth, whatever it may be. So going back to the background, kind of got off tangent there. The background. So my background is 16 or 17 pages long. And it basically discusses, I'll read you the, I'll kind of read you the first paragraph, and that's all I'm going to do, just to kind of give you an idea where this is going. In backgrounds, listen, your background can be as simple. In my new campaign that I'm starting, the background has to be a minimum of 2 to 3 paragraphs, okay? Because I want to know where you're envisioning the character coming from. It kind of gives you an idea, not just a starting point, but kind of like an end point too, in a way. It's kind of odd that way, but that's the way I look at it. Where do I want my character to be? Okay, well, here's how I'm going to start him, and this is where I'm going to go towards. So here's the first paragraph, okay? So the only son of Aliana Dilettant and Jalil Maelstrom, 2 semi-retired adventurers of some renown, was born under the full moon's light. He came into this world bathed in its light, quietly without as much as a whisper, just the quiet intake of his first breath. His mother was a priestess of Bahamut, the platinum dragon, and was rumored to have dragon blood coursing through her veins. His father was a famed bard who performed far and wide at the courts of many noble. Together they have once adventured throughout the lands with a band of friends, and for the most part had retired from adventuring life, coming out of retirement only at the behest of a noble or perhaps some deed that needed doing. So there, I've set the background for my character. I can do a lot of things by mentioning that my mother had dragon's blood in her, that my father was a bard, a priestess. Now this character actually ended up being a bard. And he had dragon blood. In 3.5, you can have the dragon bloodlines. So that's how I set all that up in just that one paragraph. I've already established a lot about my character. Why did he go into adventure? Well, his parents were retired adventurers. So he's got dragon blood running. Where did that come from? From his mother. It was rumored to be, and you use words like that. Anyway, so that's kind of like my start to my background. It's long and, a little different than, hi, Danny. Thanks for joining us. Danny's just came up. So that's kind of background. And it goes into a lot of detail about how he grew up. In the end, he has an adopted half brother who's a half orc. It's really neat. The story goes on, and actually the half orc eventually comes back. And when you do these things in your background, like the half orc, your parents, the people that you've met, the dungeon master now has, the game master, dungeon master, whatever you like to be called, now has the ability to, let's say that there's only 3 of you that are going to show up to the game for a couple weeks because people are working, whatever, real life. Okay, real life. You got kids, you got school, you got work, whatever. So you got 3 of you that are going to be showing up for the next couple of weeks. And he goes, oh, wow, wait. Lavinth ran into this guy, this particular, and he kind of befriended him. And he did, the guy did Lavinth a favor and kind of put him on the adventuring trail. You know what? This guy's going to need help. I'm going to sit there. And so now what I've done is I'm going to send a request to the guild or to a place where I know Lavinth is at as a game master now. And I'm going to say, hey, this is Theodore, your friend. I don't know if you remember me. It's been quite a while. Hope all is well with you. I need help. I desperately need help. Something's happened And I know you were going to become an adventurer, and I've heard that you've been doing quite well and that you have a band of friends that might be able to help you. I could really use your help. And it'll be signed, meet me at the Bull Rush Inn in, let's go to Draconis Rule. Boom. Signed your friend Theodore. And so that's now delivered and it's waiting there. So when Lavinth comes through with his friends for that day, I say, hey, when you walk into the Mermaid's Tail, that's the name of the inn they're at. Actually, I use an adventuring guild. So someone will come over and say, Lavinth, hey, we got this missive for you that came in from Draconis Rue. It's addressed to you. And Lavinth would probably tip him, give him a silver or something. And he'll open it and he'll read that and go, wow, now he has a choice. He doesn't have to jump on it, but being Lavinth, he'll probably talk to whoever his friends are at the table and say, hey, listen, I have a friend. And also now they're off on another adventure, the three of them, with someone from his past. So really, when you do something in your background, the more entertaining, the more in-depth your background is, the more a game master can do with it. I could read a couple of excerpts. Like, let's go further into the story. All right. And I'm not going to go into where there we go. All right. So this goes on. Let me see if I can read a little something. Oh, here we go. Okay. So this is a little bit further down. This is years later. Lavinth would travel along the eastern lands for quite some time. For 3 seasons. So see, now this is all in my background. Vlad traveled with him. That was his uncle, showing him how to navigate the open road and indoctrinating him into the ways of the world. They stopped in many hamlets, villages, and small towns. And upon entering, they would visit for a week or two. Lavinth always made it a habit to gather all the information he could and to learn as much of the lore in the area as possible. In that time, they spent many a night out under the moon and the stars, with most of the traveling being done at night or in the early morning hours. As the harvest season was coming to a close, they were nearing a small village called High Hill, named so because it sat upon the tallest hill that would hold a settlement when they spotted smoke in the sky. Pulling the wagon aside and hobbling the horses, they snuck off into the night towards the village. So that sets up a whole nother thing. So I wanted to be a bard. I want to be a bard in that game. So I've set it up to where I'm traveling with my uncle, who's also a seasoned adventurer, and he's just taking me out to learn the ropes. And in the meantime, I'm describing how I'm learning the lore on the road of the different areas, now basically the eastern section. So when I go to the Dungeon Master and I make a history check and I'm in the eastern lands, he's going to go, oh, you know what? Lavinth traveled out there for like 3 seasons. Let me see what he might know. And he might go, you know what? Roll me a history check with advantage, because I made it a point in my background, and I have the history skill, okay? And this is how the game relates to your background. And it may not be all the time, but there are times that the Dungeon Master can go into your background and say, hey, this guy, I'm going to give him advantage. Or he may just tell me something. He may go, while you were traveling in the eastern lands, you heard this rumor, or you overheard a conversation, or you were talking to a traveling merchant. Simple things like that make the game give you more. There's a lot of diversity when you do it like that. It's not role playing, swinging the sword, rolling the dice. I was just talking to somebody and said, that kind of, for some people, the role playing is a lot more fun than the actual combat. For some people, they just want to get in there and they want to see what they can do with these stats and these scores that they've done. And that's cool too, because the game combines the two features. And that's the fun part. There's always a nice little niche. I have a bard who's coming on, going to be playing in my campaign. That's going to be run by one of my ex-martial arts students. And he is playing a bard, a half-elf bard. And his whole background is he wants to write, compose music, and be famous, a famous bard. And he has learned that to him, the easiest way is going to be an adventurer and to travel the land, playing his music and learning and taking those adventures and the knowledge that he gains and putting them into song and lyric. And that's going to be a lot of fun because he's pretty good. So that's kind of like an idea. The game hasn't even started, but I know all that about his character already. And he's been reading a lot of books and stuff. and studying different types of music. And as a bard, that's really, really cool. So he'll be able to go into, and he's actually written some songs. It's going to be a lot of fun. Um, he's well known in his little hamlet village that he's from, and that's okay. Let me tell you something. It's okay to write in a cool thing about you. Hey, I am very well known. You can even say the word famous. I am famous in my village for performing. What does that mean? It means that in your hamlet, it's like the big fish in a little pond. I mean, he lives in a small village or maybe even a hamlet, and he's really good at his music. His perform may be really good. And so these people have been enthralled with him, and hell yeah, such and such is wonderful. He's the best bard I've ever heard. He's been entertaining us for years. So that makes him famous. What's wrong with that? And that's something that I can work on because, sometimes with famous can also has that slash infamous, famous, infamous. So you can have fame and infamy at the same time, depending on who's looking at it, because it's all in the eyes of the beholder. Oh, talking about beholder, look. I kind of want to jump over Xanathar's Guide to Everything. So we're talking about worlds and backgrounds and RPG and role-playing. So I have my world up here for a reason. Remember I was talking about the Eastern lands and Giovanni traveling the Merchant's Road. So these are all neat things that I set up for my players. So if you wanted to... let's say you want to be famous. You want to be a merchant, though. And there's characters, some characters just want to go on adventure to be a support character. They don't want to be in there fighting. They don't mind healing. They don't mind casting spells. Those are your support characters. But what is behind that character? Okay, so that's where the role playing comes in, and it's not just role playing. Like I said, if you really get into your character, what if you did meet one of the famous merchants, Giovanni Otraves? What if you wanted to go on the road with him, right? And adventure that way by guarding his caravan. Hey, that's one of the most sought after jobs, caravan guards, because there's all kinds of crazy things, bandits and monster raids, and somebody's got to guard the camp at night, especially when you're hauling around a lot of goods, right? Okay, so there you go. And in the meantime, maybe the mage or the bard or whatever is learning the merchant craft from Giovanni, or maybe one of Giovanni's assistants at first. And as time, and then you go off and you save this town and you go and conquer this dungeon, put the undead to rest finally in this area. But you always keep connecting with Giovanni, and you take a merchant whenever he's in the area. You kind of go off with him and do a merchant guard kind of thing. And so you're learning. Eventually, you got to retire. That's what I say. One of the things about the Adventuring Guild that I try to portray is that, now granted, let's look at D&D. You got your humans, your short-lived races like the humans, gnomes, halflings. You got your mid-lived, which are like your dwarves, your tieflings, I believe. Of course, the dragonborn, that kind of thing. And then, of course, you got your long-lived races, which are like your elves. Your elves. They live hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Half elf is kind of one of those mid-range also. So what do you do? Let's say your character, we don't really keep track of age, but what if? So my Lavinth character, he's an elf, so that's going to be, but who do you know 300 years down the line? What happened to your friends? Now in my world, in the world that I'm creating, I've taken Lavinth and some of the adventuring band that used to travel together, and they've become like the proprietor, like Thane's Ash is now the proprietor of the Dragon RN. He's not a proprietor. He's a human. He's up there in age. He's in his 50s, 60s. Could he still go adventuring? Absolutely, because he's high enough level to go adventuring. But now he's part of he runs the Dragon Dens Inn. Excuse me, the Dragon Dens Inn and Dragon Song. And he runs the Adventuring Guild. So that's what he set up there. There's another adventurer who runs the one up in Dragonar, and so on and so forth. So Lavinth and his friends, those who are still traveling with him, still frequent there, but now they take on the role of like mentors. So if a character wants to learn something unique, there's connections that can be made. So that's role playing. So even though you're dungeon mastering, if you've had a character that you've played, and that campaign for whatever reason ended, or you only play it sporadically, you can take that character, even though he's higher level, bring him in and give him a role. And now you're role playing your character. So who better than you, right? To role play your own character. Will he go on adventures with the characters? Never. Might he come in and save him out of a dire straits? Maybe. Will he be available for mentoring or to ask questions or maybe to confirm things? Yes. That's the kind of thing that you can do with your characters. So there's a lot that goes into that. And like I said, it just depends on which direction you want your campaign to go, how helpful you want to be as a DM, how much role playing you want to put into it. Listen, role playing can be as simple as there's a character over there. You say, okay, well, you come into the tavern and you see Bartholomew over there. He fits the description that you were told to ask about this mission. And what do you do? And the characters go, okay, we walk up to him and want to talk to him. All right, well, you talk to him. He asks you, what are you doing here? And then the response is, oh, we were told by sisters to come see you about a mission. And the guy, he goes, oh, okay, good. Well, yeah, this was left by Baron Ronaldo. He needs you to seek his daughter out. She's been kidnapped by some kind of bandits and taken to this abandoned ruin, abandoned keep at the foothills of the mountains. And he's willing to pay you 200 gold each, plus whatever you find is yours. And there may be further rewards depending on what you do, how well you accomplish the mission. He would like his daughter back alive, if at all possible. So the adventurers go, all right, well, sure, we'll go do that. There you go. That was a whole role-playing session. It still got the adventure started. It was just a little bit more direct. And role-playing isn't something that you have to jump into, into deep end, like they say, of the pool. You can. Sometimes it's nice to get together with some experienced adventurers and go on a couple of adventures and see the mood of the party. Remember, it's not just one player. It's one game master, although I have seen multiple game masters that kind of take turns in a campaign also, so they can all play. It's really neat that way. That's a totally different world there. And you can kind of, how do you call it, join in as much as you want or as little as you want. That's the thing. You have to determine for yourself where you want to start at and where you want to go. And you'll see as time goes on and you gather with the same group of people that you start to loosen up. You feel a little less, I won't use the word timid because it's not really about it, but nervous, I guess is the word, because you may not know these people. They're different levels of playing. Some people may be great at role playing, and their characters are really designed for support. And the only time they shine really is when they role play. Their characters are very charismatic in that way. There are other people who shine when in combat. There are some. It's a balance that you can balance out to do both pretty good. The role playing, though, believe it or not, you can offset a lot of things with role playing. I do believe that. A lot of my role playing leads to very little dicing. Only when you're trying to do something like you're trying to eavesdrop or you're trying to quietly stand in the shadows behind someone so you can hear a conversation going on, or maybe peek at a map or something. Well, you have to make dice rolls. Other than that, you role play. You're going to get a lot more out of role playing with me anyway than you would rolling dice. In fact, you won't see a lot of dice rolling going on, to be honest with you. So kind of went over role play. I didn't want to jump in and just kind of inundate you with a lot of what do you call it, finer aspects of role playing that people like to say. I just kind of want to give you an idea of what it's like and how much and how little you can have in a game. And it all depends on your game master. And those are parameters you can just ask your game master. Are we going to do a lot of role playing? We're going to be more dice combat oriented, and you'll find a fine solution, a middle point to that, as I guess you could say. So there you have it, role play. It's really in depth. There's a lot of great videos, tutorials. I mean, in the end, it's completely up to you. How do I want to role play this character? And you'll notice that your attitude will change from character to character as the character's class is different. I don't let you role play a barbarian the same way you would a wizard, let's say, or a warlock as opposed to a paladin, or a rogue as opposed to a cleric. So these are the things that you have to determine, and then go from there. The background will help you, and your DM will help you. I help my players develop their backgrounds because I want them to be tailored. Sometimes I have an idea, especially when it's my world. I have an idea of if you come from here. Okay, well, hey, let me throw some things at you, and you can kind of grab it what you like, and then we'll put it together, compose that background together, and that way I know that the character's happy, and in a way it kind of fits the campaign, and it gives them more to do in the campaign. But that's role playing. It's kind of like, it's not even role playing 101 what I went over. It's kind of like this day one, as I like to call it, day zero. The oh my gosh, what's the word? The before. I'm kind of preparing you for what's to come. As I said, when I bring people in, which is my next goal, is to bring a guest in once a week and do maybe like a little 5 to 10 minute role play session, probably closer to 5 minutes. But you'll get to see different scenes. Maybe a bartender meeting someone for the first time, or ordering a drink, or trying to get a mission granted or a contract signed. Anyway, so I'm gonna leave it at that. Role playing is a lot of fun. It's what makes D&D D&D. Anyway, this is John from the Dungeon Corner at the Collective saying farewell. Have a beautiful day adventuring, and may the road always rise up to meet your feet. Take care, everyone. See you next Friday.